Hello, I'm Georgia Shakti-Hill, and I want to welcome you to Living in Balance. Our guests today are from Asheville, North Carolina, one of the most beautiful places on the planet, where people are being drawn from all over the planet to that special place. The name of this show is Spirit in the Smokies. Come join us. Spirit in the Smokies, I love it. That is the name of a magazine, and the two people who helped create that are with us today. Gayatri Lee, PhD, and Raphael Peter. And I'd like to welcome you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
Spirit in the Smokies, you created that.
We created that about almost 5 years ago now, and it's been going on and very well received. It's a publication that we call New Paradigm Living. And the reason we put that as our subtitle is because we wanted to distinguish it from New Age, which is a phrase that I think has gotten to be sort of meaningless.
But paradigm, some people don't know what that means. Is it a synonym for model, or how do you define new paradigm living?
Well, the word paradigm is borrowed from physics. It's physics being the study of reality. So what we're looking at is a whole different way of approaching reality versus any particular religious movement per se. So a paradigm is just a sense of reality and a study of reality.
Okay. And the work that you do also, in addition to Spirit in the Smokies, is you are involved with the Asheville Playback Theater. And playback, that's the key word there, not just Asheville Theater, but Playback Theater. And what is that?
Well, Playback theater is an original form of improvisational storytelling theater which includes people's personal stories brought to life on the spot, played back.
Yes. And I love it. It's really interesting because you warm the audience up. I've read all about it, and I haven't been to one of the plays yet. But once you get the audience kind of with you, then you ask someone to come on stage and share a personal moment, a personal story. And they then choose one of the actors?
Well, they choose, there's typically 4 actors and a musician. The set consists of boxes, just simple boxes, and brightly colored pieces of cloth on like a screen like the one behind you. And when it's appropriate, after the actors are chosen to play the different parts, actors play anything and everything. Animals, inanimate objects. I've played a lot of grandmothers. I've played a few cups. And then the storyteller's sitting on the stage and gets to see their story come alive right in front of them.
So it really is improvisational, but it's improvisational on a very personal level.
Yes.
And what I saw in how this really worked together is that's how your drama is portrayed. That is the theater. But then also with you, your publication has a different kind of an emphasis. We don't just write articles and submit them to Gayatri. You have another purpose.
Correct. Rather than articles of information, which addresses more the intellect and just the mental body, we really encourage people to write transformational stories where they emphasize their own personal transformation. And in so doing, it brings to life a lot of magic from their lives. And the magic comes through in the person sharing how they have transformed and what that means to them versus just the experience that happened on around them.
So you ask people to really share at a very personal level.
Very personal level.
And it's those moments that were profound.
The moments that were profound and how they have changed since then, how they've integrated into their actual lives in a pragmatic, practical way. So how they have actually changed. Most of us have read the book Conversations with God, for example, and he talks about that we're creators, and the most important creation is ourselves, the creation of ourselves. So as we go through the various transformations that we go through, we see ourselves differently. And when we share our stories, other people can identify with us and thereby with our transformation.
Yes, because it is, again, that shared human experience for the people who have awakened to their own spiritual self. And when they share, then, and it's interesting because your background was not in journalism or in publication, but you're a psychologist?
Correct.
Okay, so that does lean itself to the personal stories being shared, does it not?
Absolutely. I'm the editor of Spirit in the Smokies, and so people consult with me regarding their stories and how to edit them and how to frame them. And many times, Georgia, it looks an awful lot like counseling that goes on over the phone with these people, because they might be at a very tender place with their transformation. They might be hesitant to make it so public, but in the process of doing it, and we encourage them to take this approach, they actually deepen their own benefit and deepen their own transformation. So it can be sometimes challenging for the author, and I always say, well, if it ends up that you don't want to have it published in Spirit in the Smokies, fine, because the most important part is the transformation.
Yes, they're not quite ready yet, but I see the synergy again between your work and now the audience. We have some wonderful photographs of some of the actors, and how is that person then changed by having seen their personal story? What's the kind of response that you get back from the people whose stories you have portrayed?
We've had a variety. I mean, there's always laughter involved. This is family theater. This is improvisation at the highest form because we're honoring the story. And so we've had storytellers sit up with us crying. I can remember one man who was a Native American man who was in the Vietnam War. When he was asked afterward, does that kind of capture the story you just told? He said, I feel this is the first time in my life I've been heard.
Ah, okay. So that's one example of a story that's shared. What are some others? You said you've played grandmothers and you've played cups.
Right.
Okay. What are some of the types of stories that people are comfortable in having you act out?
Well, typically, see, this occurs monthly in most of the cities around the world. So it's another name is Theater of Neighbors. So once someone comes to a performance and it really takes for them, they tell their friends and they come back and they keep coming back, and ultimately someone will come up and tell a story. So it's getting used to the casualness and the light stories, and then some of the serious stories take place. We've had every kinds of story. We've had abuse stories, we've had Vietnam stories, tragic stories. My most embarrassing moment, leaving a job, finding God, finding love.
So you, and as the actors, then you just have to be ready, and that must be the challenge there. So the actors then are also, they're growing through the experience probably incredibly. Do you participate in this?
Not in the theater troupe
You're
per
the
se.
audience?
I'm the audience. I'm their biggest cheerleader, however.
Okay.
I love what they do.
But the actors are transformed too?
Well, we rehearse, how do you rehearse improv? Well, you rehearse with your own stories. So we rehearse every week. We have been for almost 5 years in our company. With our own stories, people have stories occurring every single moment of their lives, and it's just discerning the ones that are looking to be told. And so if I'm having a particular day and I go to rehearsal and you know, our director would say, well, who's got a story to, you know, we've got to do some work. Say, well, let me tell you about my day. And through telling or something that triggers something from my past. And yes, we go real deep, and there's a lot of trust involved in any kind of improv.
But you also said this is done all over the world. Okay, so tell us a little bit about the history of playback theater.
Playback was conceived by a man named Jonathan Fox in 1975 in the Hudson River Valley up near New York. He was a theater person, he was with the Peace Corps, he was very much into storytelling, and he got involved in psychodrama, which is kind of, people who are aware of psychodrama say, oh, this is a little bit like psychodrama. This is truly the fun theatrical part of that experience. Playback is designed certainly to transform, and it's not designed as a therapeutic mode, though of course that happens. The transformations take place.
So as a side effect, we have therapy going on. So I just keep seeing the synergy between what you're doing. Do you ever have someone who writes for you come to the theater too? And I mean, is there...
Yes. On occasion we have people at Playback Theater who will tell transformational stories, and I love that. And of course, Asheville, North Carolina has become quite a mecca for spiritual seekers. So we're seeing that more and more.
Yes.
You were mentioning about the healing aspect. One way it's healing, and as a psychologist I can speak to that, is that when a person is the storyteller, they shift from a story in which something happened to them to the author now of the story, to the writer and director of the story.
Yes.
And in the metaphysical teachings, a big thing is to get away from being a victim and to realize that we're really the co-creators in our lives. And so it's a very powerful shift that happens for the storyteller.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but that would make sense, because that is one of the steps that we have to take, is taking responsibility for what happened, stepping back from it, and then also understanding our power in it. Yes, and getting out of the victim mode. So both of these are lending themselves to
transformation.
Yes,
right.
We're coming back to that again, are we not?
It's interesting that both of these occurred in our lives within the same couple of months 5 years ago.
Yes. So together you have come to Asheville. We're going to talk a little bit more about that as a Mecca, because it is a tremendous power center. But we'll take a break first. And if you will stay tuned, we will be right back with more of Spirit in the Smokies. If you are just joining us, we are talking with visitors from Asheville, North Carolina, and the topic is Spirit in the Smokies. And we have visited Asheville, North Carolina, and it is a gorgeous, beautiful place. It's a friendly city, and the people there are so spiritually aware. Even, I understand, is it the mayor is on a spiritual path and aware of it?
She's on her spiritual path. She wouldn't, a lot of people don't want to call themselves New Agers by any means, but she's definitely a new paradigm thinker.
I was just going to say, I bet she's into the new paradigm living. Wonderful, yeah. And because of negative connotations, we can just leave that New Age part out, because we just like people to be awakened to who they are. Correct. And one of the things we were going to talk again about was the Asheville Playback Theater and its universality now, because it started in Hudson River Valley, but it's all over the world.
It's in, there are over 70 professional playback theater companies around the world in over 24 countries on 5 continents. There's a playback company in Russia, in China, in Belfast, Ireland, in Bangladesh, South America, Europe. It goes on and on.
And you take your theater, for example, into the prisons?
Yes.
Okay, you have a grant to do that.
We've received actually 2 grants now. We've worked with the women's prison outside of Asheville, and also a men's prison.
And so you do it with purpose then. I imagine that, is there any difference in the level of sharing at the prison than there is in the outside world?
Yeah, I mean, basically everybody has a story. Stories are really the oldest teaching method in the world, and since day one people have been telling stories, so the form is the same. There's a little tentativeness in the prisons because the guards are standing there and some of the inmates are wondering, but we've had them get very bold in front of them and say, I'm guarding my words and I'm going to tell you my truth. The humanity is right there. I mean, they're human beings, they just have a different lifestyle.
Yes, and as we speak of themes, I have in front of me one of your publications, and this one is about, there's a theme to each one. Now this one is about embracing our dark side.
Correct.
And I'm such a Pollyanna, we just never talk about the dark side. We always just want to go into the light. But you said all of the people who are light workers and so forth, they have to acknowledge and own it, and so people talked about that, and they shared their stories of their dark side.
It's a big topic. This particular issue came together, as they all do, quite magically, because we don't announce ahead of time what a theme is going to be. We're sort of guided to who the interview person will be. We do have interviews every month. And then the stories kind of come in and they all seem to coalesce. Like one ended up being all about near-death experiences last year when we interviewed Daniel Brinkley. This particular one, the interviewee was Debbie Ford, who wrote a wonderful book called The Dark Side of the Light Chasers. And it's all about embracing the dark side, which is about loving all of who we are. And that's part of the practicality of approaching your spirituality. And I think it's real important to embrace all of who we are. I read something recently from James Twyman, who is the interviewee for December of 1999. And he gives a process in there that is wonderful. And in essence, what it is to take whatever emotional energy we feel, locate it in our bodies, and then just experience it as energy rather than having a judgment of positive or negative to it, and bringing it up through the heart center and radiating it out. To me, that's related to embracing the so-called dark side, which are simply just emotional energies and thoughts that we have put value judgments on.
Okay. So you are teaching all the time then through your magazine?
Absolutely.
And you are a teacher of creativity. That's one of your gifts. You've always been in drama and television and just in this whole area of sharing from the dramatic and creative perspective. What is a teacher of creativity? What do you teach?
Well, very much like Gayatri was sharing, we're all co-creators, and my experience has been that everybody has a creative impulse, and my job, my joy of being, is to bring that out, and through the form of Playback is one of the main things. I teach with my artistic director. We've been teaching for years, adults, kids. We are going to start teaching in the prisons, just to access that innate ability of being natural, saying what's happening, you know,
And often creativity has been stifled through our life as children, or someone has said we weren't an artist, as someone was just sharing with me, or that we can't act, or we can't sing, or we can't. And you're wanting to draw out what is that natural, and all of us have some level of creativity.
Cooking, gardening.
Yeah.
I actually saw someone, a janitor in a building one night, I had forgotten something, went back, who was mopping the floor and kind of dancing and shaping, you know, and I was just stood back. He didn't know I was there, and he was creating.
Yes.
I like to think that the form that we use can bring it out, because everybody can share of themselves, and the improvisational form really isn't that scary once you start being yourself. Improvising real life is what Playback is about.
And you really do serve people well in doing that. And you were going to say?
There's a real important point here, and this is something that I've just realized since moving to the Asheville area, and that is that creativity and owning ourselves as creators is essentially spirituality. That spirituality and creativity are one. And it's for us to recognize and really embrace that we are the creators, or co-creators with a capital C, of our world, of our reality. So they actually marry the two concepts, creativity. We're all fabulous creators, and we do it all the time, whether we're conscious of it or not.
Well, you like to share what you call practical, grounded spirituality.
Well, I could tell a brief story or give you an example of the kind of stories that come in.
Okay.
One is a woman 20 years ago was very concerned about giving birth to her second daughter. She was concerned about the pain. And in the midst of her giving birth, all of a sudden she spontaneously started to tone. Now 20 years ago people weren't into toning. And she started toning. Her midwife was wise enough to start toning with her at least as loud, and the woman got to discover that she had no pain whatsoever when she was toning.
Wow.
And that she was embracing a creative part of herself that one could talk about in terms of her spirituality, but you can see the pragmatic application here. If a mother's having a much easier time at giving birth, then she's bringing forth the next generation with a measure of grace and ease.
Yes. And the toning is just simply that, a tone that is a sustained sound.
Correct.
Yes.
And just improvised.
Yes. And the midwife was bright enough to go with her.
Exactly.
To be, or was empathetic enough or intuitive enough. And that's very practical, is it not?
It's very practical.
Yes.
There's a creative impulse.
Yes.
Or the practicality of looking at the thoughts going on in your mind, knowing that our thoughts create. So you look at what you create, what you've attracted into your life, and you understand and appreciate that this is what you have created. So you start to shift your thoughts and your emotional energy behind the thoughts, and lo and behold, what you draw to you is different.
We have another edition of Spirit in the Smokies, And you'd wanted to share, you said it was so hard to pick which one will I show because they're like your babies, right?
Right, right.
But this one, you said the theme of this one was what?
The theme of this one actually is bringing together the whole idea of spirituality and creativity. The interviewee person, this is February 1999, was Patch Adams.
Oh, yes.
And so this is bringing together the ideas of spirituality, creativity, and relationship. And it actually, in this one, I tell the story of how the two of us met, and Patch Adams was significant in that.
Oh.
And that story is actually on our website as well.
So another love story.
Right.
We do love that.
We created it.
Yes, and also I had read an interview that you had done that was on your website that was really very profound about a place that we had visited, the Ascension Center that was right outside of Asheville. And so the work that you're doing is to highlight individual people in each edition and then kind of just go from there, and it does all just fall into place as far as theme and topic.
Absolutely. Like I said, we've had one whole issue on near-death experiences, and this was creativity. The one in December of 1999 is all about sound and the use of sound and prayer. You know, in the beginning was the Word, and James Twyman was the interviewee.
Yes. And with you, the work that you're doing, I know that I think you said 10 of the 12 people who are with you now in the theater started with you.
Right.
All right. So you have a cast that has been working together.
Right.
So there's a family.
Definitely.
Kind of feeling
Community
there,
is what both Playback and Spirit in the Smokies is about, and honoring people's stories.
Yes, it is. And it's done so well in such a beautiful environment of Asheville, North Carolina. It is a great place to visit, and I'm so happy that you are able to live there. When we visited, we met about 30 of your friends and associates that we could be interviewing, so it's a real power center. If you would like to be in touch with Raphael or Gayatri, and also with us, please do stay tuned. Asheville, North Carolina, one of the power centers where people are drawn, a Mecca, where people share their wisdom and their light. And these two people today have shared that with us. And it comes back to creativity, and it also comes back to each of us have our gift and our personal story. Until next time, I'm Georgia Shakti-Hill. May you be well, happy, and peaceful.